And yeah, as I say, we're going to get started. So thank you all for joining us. My name's Adam Graham. I run Grey Matters. We're a business development consultancy and essentially help agencies mentor them and empower them to win new business. And often on that journey, we get asked a lot about businesses who want to sell and want to exit, or looking for acquisition for growth. And for our job on that behalf is mainly about helping them build their brand, helping them build awareness of their agency, helping them build a sustainable pipeline. And that's obviously all very attractive to a buyer. But I wanted to do this event, bring together some people who have actually been through an M&A process and bring you their experiences and understand the decisions they've made. So I'll introduce the panel shortly. And just to start us off, I've also got alongside me Will, who runs a M&A partnership called WY. And I've invited him to join me and ask some of the questions to the panel today. And also to kick us off with just sharing an overview of sort of how the M&A market currently looks. So if it's all right with you, Will, I will hand over to you quickly.
Sure. Thanks, Adam. So hi, everyone. So I run WY Partners. We're a M&A advisory practice. We work in the media and technology space. We work across buy side and sell side. So I can give you our perspective of what we've kind of seen and how we see things panning out. So certainly we've seen at the beginning of the COVID crisis, M&A stalled somewhat in the early stages. Buyers pulled back, waited to see what was happening. Investors turned inward and looked at their own portfolio businesses. But demand has certainly picked up. I think S4 has just announced another deal today. Mighty Hive's acquired a business called Bright Blue. So we've seen a particular increase in appetite from private equity houses as strategic acquirers have hesitated a little bit. And they've been looking at both kind of direct investments to invest some of the cash they've got and also making acquisitive targets to add on to their portfolio businesses. And they've been looking at businesses, I guess, that are succeeding through the uncertainty of COVID, and also businesses that might present, valuable acquisitions in times of uncertainty where the price might be down. So we expect the outlook of M&A to continue to kind of remain strong. Buyers and investors are sitting on a reasonable amount of cash, and good businesses are always going to remain attractive investments. And I guess the final kind of snippet on the kind of landscape is that we don't think we've ever seen the market to be quite as big as it is. So we've got the kind of the original bigger groups, which are all struggling and declining, but we expect we'll be picking up their M&A to counter some of that revenue decline. There's the new challenger groups that are coming along, like S4 and you and Mr. Jones. And then there's the private equity investors are looking at the industry like never before. So yeah.
Great, thanks for that, Will. So just to bring the panelists then. So firstly, we've got James Bott. So James set up the ASO company just 4 years ago. So specializing in app store optimization, as well as Apple search, ads, and mobile strategy. And that was with one sort of strong belief that optimizing your current assets is just as important as promoting your existing business. So the agency grew at a phenomenal pace from over 2 to over 30 people in a short space of time. And he sold that business to Jellyfish in 2019 and went on to be their chief solutions officer in mobile. Jane Rutter is set up digital and creative agency called Zeal 10 years ago in Leeds. She loves digital, showing clients exactly what each penny of their advertising budget is going to do to their bottom line. And earlier this year, Zeal acquired bespoke tech firm AppMetrics, boosting innovation and promoting growth. And then lastly, Dan Gilbert set up Brainlabs in 2012. He's been on a mission to make marketing more scientific since its birth, and since then has doubled in size every year, using data and automation to drive clients' growth in paid search, display, paid social, SEO, CRO, analytics. And in 2019, Living Bridge made an investment into Brainlabs to support its acquisition growth strategy. Last year, they took a step towards what they defined as the agency model of the future by combining forces with SEO experts Distilled and US-based PPC leaders Hannapin and expanding their office footprint across the US. So that's who we've got on the panel for us. So let's get started, and we'll go to you firstly, James, if that's all right. So obviously you grew at speed there. What do you think the key to that speed was?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for us, it was all about having a very clear focus on what we actually wanted to achieve. In fact, you said it when you introduced me. We're all about we believe that optimizing your assets is just as important as basically spending money. And we kind of identified that, a lot of agencies do a lot of things, which is fine. But, you'll go onto an agency website and a lot of the time you'll see maybe 20 to 30 different services and processes that they are capable of doing. Whereas we did it the opposite way around. We basically, you mentioned 3 things there, but really we only did one thing when we started, which was App Store optimization, which is something that not many agencies did at all. And for a good 2.5 years, many clients asked us to do lots of different things for them. And we always said no, which I was really pleased about, because had we have said yes, then I think we would have diluted our proposition and our growth definitely would have stalled. So I think just having that really clear focus and going out to market with just one thing that we knew people needed. And we knew there was a gap there anyway. And once we defined the actual proposition, when we actually went to market, it literally just went a bit nuts. But the kind of nuts bit, was not an organic nuts. We had, I would say, quite an aggressive outbound sales strategy. In the previous agency that I'd worked at, we also had quite an aggressive outbound sales strategy. And, we're proud of that. I think a lot of agencies might have small BD teams, or everything grows organically, and certainly with the bigger agencies it's through intermediaries or whatever that might be. But for us, we wanted to hit the ground running. We knew we had a great product, and we immediately hired salespeople to go out to market and pretty much speak to every single person that we thought. I mean, there's 3 million apps in the App Store, and we literally just went through them all.
Did you plan to sell from the beginning?
Well, I've had prior businesses that have been through a similar type of situation. So I think in the back of my mind, honestly, yes, I think we always wanted to sell it. Selling it that quickly, I don't think we realised was going to happen. But I think the reason why we were able to sell quickly, which actually ties into the first question, which is how did we grow quickly, is that we kind of palmed off the people per hour business model and pretty much productized what we were doing straight away. So if you want ASO, this is the fixed cost and this is the deliverables at the end. So every single client that we had basically was at the same level of profitability, which allowed us to not only be profitable really quickly, but also to invest more in the team, to invest more in the sales team, and of course invest a lot more into the process, which at the time was very, very immature in terms of ASO. We didn't really know. We knew what we were doing, but not as much as we did a couple of years later. So yeah, we did know. I think we did know that we wanted to sell, but not as quickly.
Cool. And thanks, James. And Dan, so you took investment from Living Bridge. Was private equity always your preferred route as a strategic partner?
No, I mean, not at the beginning, no. When we began a process, it was a process of discovery, so finding out what was out there in terms of options. And, we met with a lot of different companies, 22, if I remember correctly, from the beginning. And when we started, we sort of actually had private equity in there as a bit of an unknown backup choice, if I'm honest, and not doing any disservice to private equity. It was just that I didn't really know much about it at the beginning. As I learned more and more about what private equity is and what it isn't, encouraged me that was the right route for our business to go down at the time. So for Brainlabs, based on where we had got to and what we wanted to keep doing, it was a perfect partner. And that's, again, no disservice to any of the networks. Like there was some great opportunities in and amongst those. It was just that private equity gave us a route to pursuing our own path, and then pursuing down this kind of M&A driven route. And
Dan, why did you choose Living Bridge in the end? Like, what was your kind of criteria, or what were you thinking?
Well, I mean, there was a brilliant cultural alignment between us and Living Bridge, and they had this track record of investing in services businesses, and I think stood apart from many of the other private equity houses in understanding that in service businesses, people are the product to a certain extent, like as in the people deliver the service, and therefore culture is a key driver of value in a services business. And Living Bridge really understood that, and you could see that within their own business, within the way that they approached their portfolio and the way that they spoke about business. So they were perfect for us, and they were the right size and had the right kind of speciality and track record. Ultimately, when it first started, differentiating one private equity house from another when you're not in that market is really quite difficult. But by the time, and now on the other side, it's probably like agency land to a certain extent, right? Like, Living Bridge are very, very different to many of their peers. I think better. They have probably the best track record in the industry, and that was important to me because we're one of their portfolio and we want to be successful as a business. So they're getting something right, and I wanted part of that. So far it's been absolutely the right decision, and they've been a brilliant partner.
Cool. Okay, and then bringing Jane in then. So obviously you decided to go down the acquisition route. Why is that? Why did you decide it was right to sort of acquire another agency? And I was interested if COVID played a role in that decision as well.
Possibly, yeah. I think it was just a desire for change, really. I'd been running Zeal for 10 years. Highs and lows. I'd grown it to about 30 people. We lost a major client. We shrank down a little bit, and I felt like I was treading water a little bit. And I had those conversations with myself of what am I doing this for and why am I doing it? And then COVID did make me reassess what I wanted out of my life a little bit, and what I wanted out of business. And actually I actually started down the selling route. So I actually thought, I want to sell either part of it or all of it. And kind of, I'd become a little bit, I think, disenchanted with it all. And it felt a lot like a burden instead of a great part of my life that it had been for the past 10 years. So yeah, I started down the I'm going to sell route, and then just 180 and thought, no, I'm going to buy it. It was very much a personality thing, and very much meeting the right person at the right time, which was completely, my mind was that I would sell part of it. And then I met Rob, the guy that owns Appmetrics, at a round table event. We started kind of cross-referring work. There's a massive affinity between the kind of clients we wanted to attract, huge affinity between the culture and how we both ran our agencies. And actually we got on really well as well, and communicated really well. So it started by, we were going to sublet some desks to him, because obviously we have a huge office that nobody can use for like 5-6 months. And then actually we said, well, should we do something a bit more meaningful? And yeah, that's where it started. So it was driven by a personal need for change. It was driven by a professional need that I felt Zeal had lost its way a bit and wasn't growing as fast as it should do. And also it came from a place where I'd been doing this on my own for 10 years and felt like I needed somebody to come into the business to actually take a little bit of the pressure off and put that kind of excitement and drive back in, because I'd probably lost it for a while.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's many agency owners who could probably empathise with that, and in very similar position. And like any good relationship, started with you sort of getting to know each other. So and just interesting then in terms of the proposition, and what Appmetrics brings to Zeal. What does that look like? How does that benefit the clients, and what did you think that would bolster to your current offering?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been doing is we've been moving away. So we do a lot of kind of web builds, but actually we started doing a lot more platform builds and putting tech as a lot more into like the center of the vision. We built kind of 2 platforms before Appmetrics. One went amazingly, like hugely profitable, amazingly profitable for the client. It was just an absolute dream. And then one went absolutely disastrously wrong, cost me about 70 grand and was just a real pain point. And so it was something that, especially with COVID, this kind of digitalization and people actually looking to move traditionally offline services online, you need more than just a website to do that. You need kind of like app development, web apps, but also like actually kind of back-end platform applications, which is what Appmetrics really focused on. So yeah, that just allows us to expand the range of development that we offer clients. It allows us more resource, because I was always under-resourced from a dev team point of view. Still are now, ironically, but we've just had like our best month in the past, probably since we lost our major client, which has been great, and everybody's busy. We've got 5 roles out for hire. So it feels like, this was the right move, and the clients that we're getting are now the clients that we want. So we've kind of shifted a load of focus on the kind of clients that we work with as well. So clients will have to be able to pass obviously we won't ask them this outright, but they will have to pass a checklist for us to be the right agency for them. And if they don't pass that checklist, then we'll pass them on to agencies that we think are better suited. But we're looking for like clients that are wanting to grow quickly, have investment to do that, see our value, and yeah, that kind of change in vision has been really important, and that's happened since Appmetrics and since the acquisition.
Yeah, so that sounds exciting and sensible to be qualifying. Sounds like you've got a new sense of direction for who you are as a business and the kind of clients you want to work with, essentially.
Yeah, I think like a lot of agencies, especially if following the loss of the big client, honestly, people would say, can you do this? I'd say yes and figure out how to do it later. And that, we needed the revenue, so I'm not kind of ashamed to say that, but it's definitely the wrong way to do it. And now, now we have this kind of really strong vision of what we do, what we're good at, and who we want to do it for. It's actually made sales a lot easier. Like I've been on calls where I've kind of been saying, do you know what, we're probably not the right partner for you. And they're like, oh no, we'll change, we'll be the right partner. So it's like, it's actually like it's really nice. It's a lot better to do that. But obviously it's not easy to, just go out and fire a load of your clients that you think are shit.
Cool. So
yeah, but just to jump in, I mean, it's music to my ears hearing you say that, Jane, because, I think every single agency is guilty of just saying yes to absolutely everything. And that is the way to really spiral down. I think that process of qualifying business that's right for your agency is absolutely vital. I mean, and even if it's a big company, like we had in the past, very big brands, but really small budgets. And you sort of like, yeah, but it's a massive brand. But actually, you're going to get, in fact, you'll probably end up losing money. And I think, it's all right to do that a couple of times because it's nice to have a logo on the website and it does look good and it can help with new business. But, just saying yes, in my opinion, I think is really the totally wrong thing to do. And I think that qualification process is the key to growing profitably and successfully and keeping the team staff morale up as well. I mean, you lose clients just as quickly as you win them, which again, for the whole company culture, is just no good. So I completely agree with what you just said there, Joe. I think that's a really important
and obviously, James, you were kind of quite ruthlessly focused with the proposition of the agency, and I presume that was what was attractive to Jellyfish and sort of what they saw in you. How did that sort of come about? Was that what they were looking for, or was that kind of like, whoa, they never saw this coming?
Well, the funny thing is 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, only people in mobile marketing would actually know what app store optimization actually is or was. Like the industry just didn't know that it even existed, and basically including Jellyfish. So I think we're probably going to talk about this later, but it's a good segue into it. I mean, we we went through a proper process with Will, who's got from WI, is also on here. And yeah, Will identified Jellyfish as being a good partner for us. And it wasn't just for ASO, it was for mobile in general. So the way that we complemented them massively, not just on the app store optimization side, but also on the general mobile market process and services knowledge base as well. And on the flip side, we didn't have any plans to actually offer, SEO or program, any other services. But obviously, as being part of Jellyfish, we knew that we wouldn't have to actually do that. But every time someone said, "Can you do this? Can you do that?" We wouldn't have to either turn it down and be thinking, "Oh, we've just turned away business." We knew we could actually, pass it straight on to Jellyfish. So the actual matching of us and Jellyfish was pretty much perfect in terms of complementary services and company ethos and those sorts of things. But back to the original question about the proposition, absolutely. I mean, the proposition, in my opinion, is the most important. I think I spent a lot of time at another agency prior to setting this one up. And you go on to pitches and basically everyone's selling the same thing. And then when everyone's selling the same thing with slightly different tweaks here and, we've got a better system or we've got a piece of technology that does that, I think that's fine. But a lot of the time it can be whether or not they actually want to work with you. It's a people business. And when you've got two companies selling the same thing, it boils down to, do you want to work with them and what are the fees? Whereas with app store optimization, the competition was so small that it wasn't like, oh, do we want to work with someone else? We were in a very fortunate position whereby our competitors, of which there were some, the way that we saw it, weren't a patch on kind of what our proposition was. So the proposition for us was absolutely key, not just in terms of growth, but definitely in terms of finding, someone to acquire us. There are a lot of businesses out there, and I think standing out from the crowd and having something either not unique or a specific proposition, I think is really, really important.
Okay. I don't think necessarily that when we went and spoke to Jellyfish that they were looking for an ASO business, right?
No, not at all.
I guess that kind of segues into the next question to Dan. How do you go about identifying acquisition opportunities? How do you see yourself mapping the market to identify what works for you?
I think it probably ties in with some of what Jane and James have said already. Like there were two principal drivers for us, which is vertical specialization or geographical presence. So in the two mergers that we did, one was Distilled, which is an SEO specialist agency with offices in Seattle, New York, and London. And the other one was a business called Hannapin Marketing, who are well known in the US, who specialize in performance marketing. So similar capability to what we already had in the business with Hannapin, and a new capability with Distilled. We didn't have SEO as a capability prior to that. So it was those two things. It was kind of one or the other. Either we're looking for presence in geographical regions or in vertical specialism. And then when we went for that, Distilled were perfect for us in a vertical context because they had a premium reputation as one of the finest SEO agencies in the world. So that kind of tied in super nicely. I think if they had been like, to the other's point, done 20 different things, then it would have been quite hard for us to kind of buy into the business or merge into the business because it's just more complicated, really.
So you were looking for something quite specific then in that regard.
Like in our M&A plan, there's a list of capabilities that we want to acquire, and then territories that we want to enter. And our plan is principally capabilities based, and it's really ordered by what are the capabilities that we think would add value to our existing book of business, to create a kind of integrated offering so that we can tie the various parts together. So SEO was the first because we've been in performance marketing, and SEO is a kind of core area of performance marketing, and that was where we wanted to start. The rest, let's say around creative, data, CRM, data science, attribution, econometrics, and then a couple of other capabilities around deepening our CRO capability, plus obviously some other then territories. So I think, it's principally driven by, where is there opportunity to do better work for our clients? Like this comes from client councils and client conversations is, which services would you love to see alongside the ones that we're already delivering, for you at a high level, and how can we integrate the rest of them?
And then on top of the sort of geography and the service offering the complementary service offering that they had, what were the other kind of things you were looking for when it, I don't know how many that boiled it down to, just that alone, but then did you then have to sort of, was it a gut instinct, or what were the other things that you thought about when making those decisions?
Yeah, it's a combination of factors, probably similar to how you would select an agency, and I think people can probably relate to that quite easily. There's a combination of capability and the kind of written number type stuff, but bigger than that, there's a kind of people connection and timing, right? So it happened to be in both instances great timing, and in both instances we built great relationships with the founders, and including even their advisors. So in both instances, great advisors that were aligned alongside the interests of the sellers, let's say, and on our side as well, like great advisors that knew or understood what we were trying to do, and knew that like the people element of this was super important to us, right? It's easy to say, but without the people there is very little business. So that was probably one of the key areas, and then obviously the performance of the respective businesses and their capabilities. So, we got lucky in some ways that we scored top marks on all of those with those acquisitions that we've done so far. And that's kind of the rubric. Maybe I'll share it with you afterwards as a sort of table of these are the different things that we're looking for. But fundamentally, like, is it a great business with good people, and are they clear about where they want to go next, either with us or without us? And that's also fine, by the way, and maybe a side point, but there are options out there, and it was through my own experience of seeking investment or selling Brainlabs that I kind of encountered these slightly awkward moments where network groups wanted to know where I wanted to be in 20 years time, and it was just like, well, I think I want to be running this business, but a long time from now, so I'm not sure. Sorry. Whereas the way that we've tried to approach it is like, look, let's just have an open conversation. Like, we can support anything, much like we can support
LinkedIn.
What, you connected how long ago? Your anniversary.
Mute there.
To mute him.
got some background noise.
There you go. It was probably meant I was talking for too long, so I'll be quiet.
Yeah. Just got bored. Thought they'd have a cup of tea. So Jane, I mean, obviously, I was going to ask you about, whether you considered to build those skills in-house. And you mentioned there before you had a bit of a roller coaster where you lost a lot of money on one tech project and you did one all right. And so I guess you had some real life experiences before jumping into this, but was it ever a case back on the table where you think, well, let's build our own development team, software engineers? How could we do this without acquisition?
Yeah, and we could have done, definitely. Like I said, we had like one terrible project, one great project. So the learnings from that, we could have done it, but we just wouldn't have done it at the speed that I wanted to. And also it was about then bringing Rob as an individual onto the board as our CTO. That was probably as important to me as the acquisition as well. So there were both those things. But I've just seen one of the questions actually, like, are there any lows of these acquisitions or collaboration with the agencies too? Like, I think the hardest thing has been the integration, because we're not in the office. We're actually all coming back into the office from next week, but that's been really difficult. And also,
have you met each other yet?
Yeah, they have. But actually, we did like a whole agency meeting on Thursday, and I was like, I'm probably the only person in the room that's met every other person in the room. There were some people that kind of hadn't met people and that kind of thing. So, and that's part COVID, and that's fine. But I also was interested about the expectations of the staff. So it was like literally about 5 days after the acquisition, And like some of the staff were like, oh, we just feel like two different businesses. And I'm like, it's been 5 days. Like, you need to give it a bit of time. Like, I don't know what they expected. So I think obviously, taking your staff along on the journey, and we didn't make too many. We gave a lot of thought to the communication, like who we communicate it to, when you communicate it to. We at Zeal, I'm very, very open with my staff, and I'm massively transparent. So it felt a little bit like cheating on them in some way, that I was doing this behind their back. But obviously there are certain things that you can't say it's going to happen and then it falls through. So yeah, it was the comms piece was really important to me, but it was interesting because these people had never been through this or didn't really know what to expect. So it was interesting to see through their eyes, like, their expectations. And also this was my first, like, any kind of acquisition or selling. So I was really careful to, again, to ask my league, like we used Clarion, who were just amazing. And I was like, I haven't done this before, so I'm going to need to, you don't know what you don't know. And I'm smart, I'll pick it up quickly, but you need to hold my hand a little bit and tell me. So I kind of, it was difficult. Like me and Rob knew exactly what we wanted to achieve and why we wanted to do it. And we were really excited. And there was like a, 2-week period, because we did it really quick. We did it in about 3 weeks. And the first bit was great. It was like, we were both on board. We knew what was happening. We were really excited. And then the lawyers got involved. And I was just like, oh my God, this is really complex. And then the share issuing was more complex than I thought it would be. And there were points where I was like, I just can't be bothered. This is too much trouble, because it's difficult. And
did you already have an advisor that you were using, or did you have to go and find one to do the deal?
So I'd done a piece of work with an advisor prior to this, actually him helping us get the agency in shape for sale. So I'd got like an advisor, and I have a lot of like close friends who are agency owners or who've been through it before. So I have like a lot of informal support. But yeah, no, I hadn't got a clue. And Rob, he's from so he set up an agency, sold it to WPP when he was 27, worked in WPP, bought and sold agencies since then, and does a lot of like venture stuff. So this for him was like, oh, you don't need to worry about it. It's a walk in the park. And I was like, I will worry about it, and I will, because I wanted to learn as well. So it was a whole it was a lot. It was fast, but that's where I want to be, and something that I'm constantly learning, and that's new and exciting. But yeah, there were times where it does get frustrating, because rightfully so, my advisors are saying, I think it's a bit like a prenup, isn't it? It's like, oh, what if he cheats on you? What if he finds somebody younger? What if he does this to you? And, you have to, I get it, you have to understand that could happen, but also it takes the magic out of it a little bit. But so it's quite a frustrating process. We actually signed it, I think, like 11:30 at night on a Friday. Just because it had been, but it took us like 3 weeks. So yeah, it's I think kind of comms, when even if it's just collaboration between agencies, but definitely bringing app metrics in, that comms piece, the staff was really important, because I needed them to get on board, and it was hard when they weren't in the office, and so they couldn't see. They just had to take my word for it that, the company was great, and the people were great, and the clients they were bringing over was great, and Rob was great, and they just had to take my word for that, because they hadn't seen it with their own eyes. So it was quite an interesting few weeks, really. But yeah, I was a bit like, it takes longer than 5 days to integrate together. Like, give me a minute.
It does, yeah. It sounds it. And I guess a lot of you share that in common, in terms of it being kind of a first kind of flurry into the M&A world. And I guess, James, when you were kind of on that journey as well, I guess you had all of those possibly concerns, or how do you communicate it to your team? But let's just start. What were the important factors for you in selling the agency? I think I know what one of the answers might be, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the commercials have got to be right, clearly. And on that point, I think it's important that you are very commercially aware in terms of what value your agency might bring. I think that's really important, because it's not always about revenue. A lot of the time, it is about profit. And if you're high revenue, low profit, then obviously it might be a lot harder to get some type of acquisition. Before I jump into a couple of other things that I think are important, I think the one thing that I think is very important, and especially for smaller agencies, if there's obviously smaller agencies on the line, I think one of the most important parts, if you want to sell your agency, is to be organised. Startups tend to be quite unorganised, and it's absolutely vital that you have all of your ducks in a row, because when you come to actually talking to partners about potentially selling your business, they are going to dig, and they are going to dig deep. So, filling up a data room, which is where you put absolutely every piece of paper and digital contract, absolutely everything in. We were very fortunate. I had 2 businesses prior to this, which were very unorganized. I went into this one saying I'm going to be super organized. So actually, when you get to that stage, if you've got everything all over the shop, it's quite frankly, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare to sort everything out. So that's just a small one. Commercials, absolutely, I think are very important. I think, you need to sell at the right time. I also think it's really important not to be greedy. In fact, I think it was Will who's mentioned this a few times, and my brother-in-law who works in a similar type of business. If you get a really, really good offer, take it, because a year later it might be a quarter of what you've been offered, obviously depending on the kind of trajectory of the business.
Or a pandemic.
Sorry, yeah, absolutely. A lot of businesses who were going to sell have not sold now for whatever reason. Because of the pandemic. So yeah, I think it is important to do it and do it properly. I think the team sort of culture and the team ethos is really important. When you're selling your company, and James sort of just mentioned this before, it is absolutely vital, because if you sell your business and you get yourself into an earn-out, which inevitably you will do, which could be from anything from 2 to 5 years within that same agency. If you do the deal and all of your staff bugger off, you're screwed, basically. And so it's really important, I think, to make sure that wherever you're going, there is a very, very strong cultural fit. In fact, part of our process, we actually took our company values and overlaid them on Jellyfish's company values, and they were almost identical, which was pretty mental. And going through the process, as Daniel mentioned before, we spoke to both trade sales, so net agencies, and also we spoke to private equity as well. And it's just the way that as you're going through that process, you really have to kind of work out how not just you, but your business are going to gel with that particular business. So I think, getting the culture right is it's absolutely vital. And I think the other thing as well is, again, Daniel also touched on this, is complementary services. I think it really has to be complementary. And there have been lots and lots of acquisitions that I have seen where there have been other businesses within that group that do a similar thing. And, you just get completely diluted. It can become very hard to hit goals, for example, especially if you sell to a big agency network. Where you sort of go in there thinking, right, we're going to get all this business and all the big clients are going to come to us, but in actual fact, that hasn't been the case for a few people that I've spoken to who sold their businesses. So I think it's a multitude of kind of being organised, obviously getting the commercials right, and you need a specialist to help you with that. Again, like as Jane mentioned, I'd never sold a business of this size prior to this. So I had no idea the mechanics of an earn-out. I had no idea really on how to properly value the business. There were so many things, and don't get me started on kind of dealing with lawyers. If we didn't have someone like Will, for example, in the room kind of explaining to us, you're doing this because of that, or you need this because of that, and don't agree to that. Honestly, God, I really don't know, we wouldn't have done it, quite frankly, or we would have signed a really, really bad deal, which does happen. So I think having the right advisors with you, I think is absolutely essential. Don't do it without a proper advisor. It's just not advised.
Not advised by an advisor.
Advised
So,
to not
so
advise.
Dan, I mean, obviously we've spoken a bit about different businesses coming together. I'm interested. Obviously, you set up Brainlabs with a very clear philosophy and culture of what you wanted to create. So now that you've got these two other agencies, how are you planning or currently integrating those businesses and maintaining that culture so that they are aligned? And maybe tell us a little bit about the communication that you went through with your teams.
Yeah. Just before I do that, just picking up on a previous point from James, just a second, the advisor piece. And actually, maybe just to add on top of that, that if you are thinking about selling, then appointing an advisor, like even if it's a passing thought, then appointing an advisor really early on, they can be a critical part of that journey from very early stages. And I'd say from the other side, as a buyer, like we wouldn't buy an unadvised business because they have no idea what expectations to have from a valuation perspective. They might think that they're going to get 20 times EBITDA and like this, that, and the other. Like when you go to a business, like if I see that they're advised by WY, Clarity, Results, Waypoint, M&A Advisory, there's loads of good advisors out there other than Will, who's also brilliant. If we don't see that, then it's quite difficult to say that they're going to know how to run out a process and that they're going to be prepared and they're going to have the right information. It becomes impossible almost as a buyer. So
we bought a lot of unadvised businesses at WPP, and you always go into it thinking this is, rubbing your hands together. We'll be able to kind of, get a deal here. The reality is it takes twice as long. You have to explain everything to them as the buyer.
yeah.
You need to take them by the hand, and they're not nearly as well organized. So yeah, as a buyer, it's always way more efficient for them to have an advisor as well, for sure.
And Will, Andy Headington's asked sort of, how much do they cost?
Too much.
Percentage. It could be a great.
Too much.
Really fair value pricing.
Let me answer that for Will, because he can't say it with a straight face. There's, like, as the business owner, the first time that you look at any advisor fees, you'll look at it and your heart will melt because you've built value in a business, and then they're expecting a percentage of that. Right? It took me quite a long time to get over, but they add value to a process. Right? Like if you do it unadvised, you won't come out with as good an outcome. And I don't mean commercially. I just mean even strategically, right? Like having the right advisor to turn around and say, actually, you know what, that buyer is putting this in front of you, but they're not going to treat you right down the line, or they're putting this offer in, but it's not a real offer because they failed to deliver on deals when they've offered them before, or whatever it might be. That type of advice is invaluable, right? Like if it prevents a false start or an incomplete process, by the way, and bear in mind, Will probably has better stats on this, but a good half of transactions fail. That's a hell of an effort from a business to begin towards a transaction and then not reach the finish line. So you really can't question it. It is what it is. You can compare and contrast between different advisors, but they earn their way, like we all do as agencies.
I just want to second that as well. I mean, yeah, when you look at it first, you sort of squirm, but honestly, I wrote. Obviously, it'd be nice if it was actually a check, but just so it sounds cool, I wrote that check with a smile on my face because it was worth every penny. I mean, it was literally worth every penny. It's the price was the cost against kind of the value that was given to us. I mean, it was an absolute no-brainer. So yes, the fees can look scary, but I guarantee you'll end up with a lot more with an advisor than without an advisor and not paying fees. I mean, that's for sure. And someone else, the guy was it Andy? Andy
Headington, yeah.
Yeah. We actually, the way that we work with Will is we had a retainer with Will actually. So retainer, which was again, I think it changes. So you have to speak to Will about that. But it was a monthly retainer. It wasn't crazy. And then we obviously worked very closely with him across not just selling the business, but getting us into shape, which again I think is really, really important. As a small agency, when you go out to market, you to make sure that, you know, not only all the questions that are going to be asked, but, you know, commercially you need to be in a good spot. And, you know, having that type of advice and looking at what we were doing and tweaking things, and again, just getting our house in order for when we then, you know, hit the button on actually going to market. You know, that cost again is minimal. You know, at the end of the day, when you hopefully, you know, there is an event and you actually sell your business, it's all very small, but you actually get value out of it anyway. In the event of a non-completion, as Daniel said, you know, you'll probably be in a better spot anyway. You know, if you do want to restart the process, or, you know, if you decided that, you know, you want to continue for a bit longer. So either way, I think, you know, you'll get value in it. You get what you pay for at the end of the day. And I think if you pay for good advice, you know, you should be on top. Is there a best deal structure? Alex Craven was asking. Maybe that's to you, Will. But
I mean, look, the best deal structure is loads of money up front and you get to walk away, but it doesn't exist. I mean, the reality is, as James says, that you know, most agency deals are going to run on an earn-out, anything from kind of 2 to 5 years. They can be all-out acquisitions at 100%, or they can be anything in between. I think, you know, generally speaking, anyone selling their business in the agency space should be seeking a meaningful sum upfront and an incentive that drives value towards the end of the deal. But the confusion with valuations is a lot of people will quote really big numbers, and that might be the whole deal value over the whole of the 3, 4, 5 years, rather than necessarily the check that's written on day one.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that's a good point actually, because yeah, some of the deals that we looked at, which were 5 years, years 1 to 3 was actually quite a low in terms of your earn out, but then year 4 and 5 it really ramped up. But we knew that the original growth stage was probably in those first 3 years. So actually, you've got to be really careful with kind of the size, the length of the earnout as well. I think is important. You know, ASL obviously is thankfully still growing strong, but with any business of any type, you know, you have to start thinking about at what point does it get really, really competitive. And do we lose this kind of first mover advantage? And there's just lots and lots of things to be considered, which is why, yeah, I mean, it's wherever you think you're going to be in 3 years' time, try and do it in 1.5, I'd say.
I think that there's a piece to add from my perspective, which is the best deal structure is whatever suits you based on your circumstances at a given time, right? Like each agency owner is different and is at different stages of their life with different priorities. And in the way that we've done our deals so far, it's trying to lean into that, not have, you know, one universal structure that applies to all businesses, because, you know, you are a real person running a real business, and, you know, it's not for, well, from our perspective, it's not for the acquirer to judge anyone's circumstances about whether they need to pay off their mortgage or, you know, do this or that or other. There's all different types of priorities. So in our deal structures, we haven't used earnouts. We've done a mix between upfront cash, deferred cash, and then equity in the top holding company structure, so that we're all aligned. And I think, you know, Will's probably right in terms of you can look at the total amount and there's, you know, be careful about how that compares to the kind of 5-year amount. But equally, like, you know, I think in the market at the moment, banks are not in the most favourable position that they've been for a long time. Right? There's a lot of businesses in a recession that they don't know if they're going to collect from. So, you know, capital is not as freely available as it might have been a year ago. You know, banks want to sort of secure their returns. So I think you'll see more deals done where there's not as much cash up front, realistically, as maybe you've seen in the last 3 or 4 years. Probably needs Will's input on it, like maybe more weighted towards deferred and, you know, back end or equity type conversations. I think you'll see more like us and S4 that aren't doing earn out deals, just because I think it's a hangover from the the sort of traditional network type model where you could sustain an ecosystem of lots of different agency brands that all kind of semi-competed with each other. Whereas I think what clients want today, and like clients have to drive what the corporate structure within a business is, they are looking for integrated services. To Mark Pritchard's point, why am I paying you to navigate your complex organization? Who are these account managers? Embedded within that quote is a recognition that agency holding company structures are too complicated to deliver the services that clients need in a digital age. So I think we'll see more integration and automatically with that. And maybe coming back to your original question, Ad, sorry, before we went massively off track. Our aim is to integrate businesses, and that comes with some sacrifice, right? That's the hard yards that James already described.
Is this agency model of the future that you allude to? Is that kind of where you think we're headed?
Well, it sounds very grandiose, but it's not really, is it? Like
no.
The agency model of the future, as I'm describing it, right, as an integrated agency type model where you build client teams around clients as opposed to departments, is actually just what they use in the large consultancy businesses. So, an Accenture, Deloitte, PwC, they're the most scaled service-based businesses on the planet, and they're much bigger than any of the holding companies. So it's not my invention. I want to be careful about what we say there. But those are integrated businesses, right? There's no complexity around what their name is. There's no internal politics. There's no different priorities. There's no account management to navigate their complex organization. They're built around the client, and actually, versus the agency ecosystem, I think they put the client at the heart of their work as opposed to themselves. So there's no equivalent of the Cannes advertising festival for management consultancies, let's say. Maybe it's because they're boring, but equally, maybe it's because they're well structured and well run businesses. And I think there's a lot to learn from that in the agency ecosystem. So it's hard to integrate businesses, really hard work. And I think probably Jane touched on it already, like the expectation from the business versus reality, and then even down the line, the constant comparison. Makes it really a tough ask, but to me, like, you put the client at the heart of what you do, and it needs to be integrated.
And Jane, just to, bringing you in terms of advice for someone maybe embarking on this process or starting to think about it, what advice would you give somebody at this time?
Somebody that's never done it before, like myself. I think it's like anything. If you haven't done it before, it can sometimes feel like it's really complicated and really difficult, and only like really experienced, like super smart people do it. It's like pretty much anything. Like, it's actually quite simple once you do it. It's like what I say to clients, like, nothing that we do here is rocket science. We're not saving people's lives. We just do a good job of the specialist knowledge that we have. I'd say find somebody that you trust, that you actually really trust, to help you through the process, and then don't be scared about it. But I saw one question actually from Laura, which was an interesting question about how do you find these people if you're looking on the acquisition route, because we're still now on it, we're looking to expand, and we're probably going to be doing it geographically. And I think that's a really good question, because I literally typed into Google like agencies to buy in like geographical location. Like, that's literally how I started. I quickly learned you probably shouldn't do that, because I got a lot of crap. And again, like, advisors are a really good way of doing that. But also, I think what I liked about the AppMetrics acquisition is, although it was done fast, we had the relationship started as something you could get out of. So we understood what they did and how they worked, and the people and the personalities, and then we kind of grew it from there. So for me personally, my next acquisition, I think, will be similar. So I'll find an agency which we can collaborate on first, to kind of then maybe go down the acquisition route with that in mind. And actually, a lot of the conversations that I was having pre-acquisition about selling Zeal, they wanted to do that with us. So it's almost like you become strategic partners. So their growth is helpful to your growth, and vice versa. But if anybody else had a better answer to that question, I would like to hear the answer. So how do you find like great agencies just to go by?
Contact Will.
Use an advisor.
I think we've got like literally 2 minutes, so I'll just go to Dan and then James quickly in terms of advice, valuable what were your most valuable learning experiences, from this time? And if you could share that with people who are looking to embark on the journey.
After you, James.
Okay, well, a couple of things. I think we've covered this a lot, but obviously seek the right advice.
Yeah.
I can't stress that enough. It's so important for finding an acquirer or for purchasing. These people speak to businesses all day long. That is their job, and carving out commercials, getting your business in shape. I mean, they know exactly what you need and how you need to look. And how you need to position yourself to potential acquirers. I think that's really important. I think the other thing, and actually Jane touched on this before and Dan started to talk about it a little bit, is transparency with the team. And this part we found this really, really difficult because you want to be transparent, and like Jane said, we were also very transparent with our team, but then at the same time you don't want to say you've done a deal and then you don't do the deal, and then so it's very difficult getting that balance of kind of getting the team, making the team aware, but then also telling them it might not work. I think to be quite honest, we did it really badly. And it did have a short knock-on effect on the integration because it was there was lots of ups and downs, and I think we could have done more to kind of had the team more involved in the process, and I think that would have made integrating post-acquisition a lot easier. I mean, you could do a whole session on that.
Dan, can I just jump in with you because I know you've got to run? So, final last words from Dan before he departs.
Just second. I think there's been loads of pearls of wisdom, and I think I second what James is saying. I think probably from my perspective, we ran hard at negotiating and entertaining lots of parties, and in the end, as maybe runs counter to what some of the other people are saying, is I think there's quite a small valuation range from a commercial perspective, at the end of the day, and actually, I think it's more important to prioritize who you're going to be working with and what you're going to be working on, because when I looked at the prospect of an earnout, 3 to 5 years, it's just a hell of a long time, right? That's a mini working lifetime. And if you're not going to be happy doing that, you hear stories from other people that aren't happy doing that. It doesn't matter what the number is in front of you. It's not worth it. So find something and someone that you really want to work with, or that will allow you a route out, and chase that.
Nice. All right. Thanks, Dan. Well, look, I think that's all we've got time for. I appreciate everybody joining the call this afternoon. There are a couple of other questions that I've jotted down. So I know Stephen and a few others I've written down. So we'll try and get back to you separately if the panel will respond to those in their own time. Only got two panelists left, and I'm running out of people. But thank you, James. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Jane.
All right. Cheers.
I'll see you all on the next event.
Cool. Cheers, guys. Thanks. Bye-bye.